Assalamu alaikum and welcome to another in our series of interviews for the Public Qur'an Campaign on the theme of My Chosen Verse. Today's guest is Ismael Lea South, an independent youth work consultant and cultural researcher. In 1996, he co-founded the Muslim rap band Mecca to Medina and later the Salam Project, an award-winning youth engagement social enterprise. For over 10 years, he has been very active in combating youth crime, in advocating Black British history in the British school curriculum, and in ex-offender resettlement. In July 2021, he will be releasing his first book titled The Unknown Black History of the UK, pre-Windrush. And in his second book, Urban Jihad, Memoirs of an Inner City Youth Work Consultant, he will be releasing that one in 2022. He is a guest lecturer at the Chester University and is a strong advocate for youth work, social entrepreneurship. He is a married father of two and lives and works between London and Manchester. So welcome to the Public Qur'an Campaign.
Thank you for having me. Salam alaikum.
Walaikum salam. So without further ado, as usual, I just hand straight over to you to talk about your first chosen verse.
Yes. The first inspirational verse of the Quran that really resonates with me is Allah helps those that help themselves. And when I first read it, of course, it went over my head. I was just reading the Quran. And then through life experiences, things I've seen, when you travel around different places, when I started to read it, maybe like the 10th or 20th time, I realized that, yeah, sometimes when you're going through certain issues in life, when you make the first step, then there's a mystical support to take the second step. Because sometimes just to take the first step is such a big, how can I say, a big issue. And you're thinking, I'm not sure if I should, I'm not sure, maybe it won't work or whatever. And then when you take the first step, you realize, oh, maybe it's not that bad. Okay. And then the second step, then you see momentum, then you see support. So when I read it now, and it says that Allah helps those who help themselves, that really inspires me. And I always say to people, when people call me and say, oh, I want to start up my own organization, or I want to do this, I always say to them, don't wait on anyone, make the first step. Make the first step. And sometimes you come across people say, oh, blah, blah, but I'm not sure, I've got this, I've got that, I've got this. I said, then I use that quote, Allah helps those who help themselves. And I always use it to remind myself as well, because sometimes I could get caught up in that as well. I'm a human being. Sometimes I can think, oh, maybe not, I can't do that. Maybe it's not for me. But then sometimes there's some things that I'm doing now, I never encompassed that I would be doing it, but I took the first step and I was genuine with what I wanted to do. And I have to give credit to Allah and to that verse, and said, Allah helps those who help themselves. And I think it's very important. And then now as a father, I try to instill that in my kids. I try to tell my kids, don't beg nobody for nothing. If you want anything, go for it. Make the step with good intention, and then Allah will help you. It will come either conventionally or unconventionally. So that verse is very important to me.
It's nice. It's a translation. It's interesting, that translation. That translation is quite close to this sort of the well-known kind of thing within Christianity. This phrase, I think it's even in the Bible, something to that effect. I think that normally it's translated. Most people may not. I kind of, when I first heard you say it, it's like, oh, that's not quite the way I've heard it translated before. Is that Allah does not change the condition of a people till they change what is in themselves, which has the same meaning.
Yes.
But it's I think very much but also I would say that blaming kind of mentality whereby we don't do things because we say that we can't, or that we're prevented or somehow. This is also something we have already changed within ourselves. We've kind of learned that lesson, which we shouldn't have learned.
Yeah.
And our natural state isn't to be, kind of hammered down and feeling stuck. We are naturally very, as kids, we just run at everything and we try everything, and then somehow it gets kind of pushed out of us, and we lose hope in some fashion that we can control our environments. And I think it's once you start thinking I can't about anything, you won't try. and you're stuck, and you can. It reminds me, it's a kind of a, I think it's a very crucial mental trap we fall into, you know.
Yes.
And I noticed this when I was studying, and at one point, and I was thinking, I'm feeling unhappy, and I want to, I don't know, socialize a bit, feel a bit happy. I'm going to spend some time with my friends. I'm going to go off and spend some time with my friends. And I went and spent some time with my friends. And after spending some time with my friends, I realized that I really ought to be studying, and that made me feel unhappy. And I realized there's a bit of a cycle going on here. So what's going on here is that why am I feeling unhappy? Because I'm not studying properly. And then I use that reason to go off and spend even less time studying. And then it makes me even less happy. and the cycle just carried on. And because I was essentially taking the social time as a cure, a sort of self-medication effectively for my unhappiness, which wasn't caused by loneliness, it was or anything like that. It was caused by me having a kind of guilty conscience about not doing my work. So the more I treated my symptom with the wrong cure, the worse the disease gets. And this is I think what we can sometimes do is we take something as a medicine, thinking it's going to help us, but actually it's the thing making us ill. And I think that applies to all sorts of things, like especially things like drug addiction and things like that. People are doing it as a self-medication for some sort of pain.
Yes.
And it's causing the pain, and they don't realize it's causing the pain because the pain happens after the pleasure. But that is the ultimate cause of the pain, and we get in these cycles because we don't notice that.
Yeah, because as a youth worker, funny thing you mentioned that I was talking with some of my colleagues, and we were talking about many people, young people that we've met who are taking drugs, and many of them are taking it to escape either abuse, trauma, or other issues from their childhood or while they're growing up. So they're trying to self-medicate, not knowing it's making them worse.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I think that's the root cause of a lot of it. There's the whole issue about drug addiction came from a study. I don't know if you've heard of this, but there was Johan Hari did a very nice article on this a long time back, a couple of years ago, I think. And he talked about this, so it's the first time I heard of it. But they put a rat in a small cage, and they gave it 2 bottles of water, one laced with cocaine and one just normal. And the rat went to the bottles, tried both, and then went back to the cocaine one, kept going back to the cocaine one again and again and again until he died of an overdose. And he said, look, this is drug addiction. It's seriously dangerous. We can't let people have access to this stuff. Okay. And that was the settled kind of opinion for a while. And then another guy came along, I don't know how long later, but people can go away and look this up themselves. And he said, well, this is not a fair trial because the rat is basically in solitary confinement in an extremely unnatural condition. Okay. So they said, let's take this rat out of its cage and put it in a beautifully, set up environment. So it's got everything it wants. It's got other rats to have relationships with and play with, and everything you possibly need as a rat, perfect rat home. Okay. And he set this up, and then he put the 2 bottles in, and the rat tasted one and tasted the other. And then when he went away, he went to the cocaine one once. So, that's a weird effect. I'm not going to have that again. I just like the water. And he never went back to the water. Moreover, so he never got addicted in the first place. So the environment shaped his choices. And then the same thing, they even put a rat who they'd put in the first condition in the solitary confinement setup and got addicted, and put him in the new environment, and he stopped completely. So
look at that environment.
The environment is basically, when people realize that most of drug taking is self-medication, and it's bad self-medication, but the pain is too much. Social pain, it's emotional pain, it's other kinds of pain, and they use these as ways out. And we need, this is why, I think efforts at decriminalization are very interesting. But this is way off topic, but I think it's very interesting. The whole thing about
interesting.
I can't do something, and you get in that state. And I think that's what it is there's some kernel of a waswas we take from shaitan, that says you can't.
Yes.
And once you believe that, once you believe, oh, I have to do this, I have to take this thing to help me, I need some external support. Once you take this and you believe it totally, then you're stuck in a spiral, because you can't. You have to challenge that fundamental thing that I can't, or that I'm too weak, or I need to have this because it's too much pain, whatever it is. No, you realize if you can stop that, taking that, whatever that self-medication is that's causing the pain, and you think it's helping the pain, you realize if you give it time, you will start to feel better. And then you start, aha, the absence of it makes me feel better. And that's challenging your original idea. And so that's the change often you need to do, is to undo something. And in fact, this verse, if I recall correctly, is in the context of people, Allah changing people's condition from the better to the worse, not the other way around. So people naturally would be in the better condition, but they do something in themselves that makes them then start to fall. And like a sort of teen, which talks about, we are made you in the best of molds, and then we bring you to the lowest of the low, except those who believe and do good work, and so on. So it is we are naturally in a good state, and we get brought down because of these kinds of self-medications, we can call it that way, but the ways we change ourselves in a bad way. So alhamdulillah, it's a very important thing. I think about these sorts of things a lot, but to don't it's a big topic. It's a lot of work. There's a lot of work
to
to be done
speak
in it.
to you more often. Yeah, you're giving me some new things there. Yeah, so that's why, because and then I've noticed that as well, even with like another thing pertaining to the verse, like when I was single and I was looking for a wife, and I thought maybe like 5 years before I was ready to have a wife. Yes, I should have a wife. And then I realized some of my practices, my daily habits were not conducive. As a married man now for around 15 years, I've realized, oh my God, I wasn't ready for marriage then. But then I had to do some research. I had to read a lot about marriage, do some research, read deen-related books, as well as mainstream books about being a good husband. I'm not saying I'm the best husband, I'm still trying, but I believe by me going through those, studying, learning, researching, I believe that was a great prerequisite for myself before I got married. And also as well, thankfully, I've had, of course I had a lot of friends, but I had 3 main friends who were married. And then because I used to go to their homes, I used to see them and watch them in action, how they were engaging with their wives. So just by sitting down, watching them, I was learning a lot, just as much as I was learning from the books. So Brother Abdul Kareem, Talib, Brother Rakeen, Brother Bilal Ahmed. These are 3 brothers whose houses I used to go frequent very often. And because they were all stably married, I just learned so much just by watching them. I learned just as much about watching how they conducted themselves in the marriage, just as much as I would by reading a book, because they were showing me the practicality of how you engage, how you communicate, how you share your time. You've got to make sure you spend enough time with your wife. It's not all about work. And at the same time, you can't spend all your time with your wife because you've got to go out and pay the bills. So, yeah, I believe that sometimes, like I said, Allah helps those who help themselves. And part of that is, and like you gave the other translation of changing your heart. So I believe that the learning and trying to adhere to a different way of what you're used to, because as you know, being a single man, when you're getting married, it's a totally different dynamic. So it takes a while to adjust. So I believe that was an example.
Yeah.
And another example, sorry to go on, is like, because originally I used to when I first left school, I used to work in banking. I used to work for NatWest Bank, and I had aspirations to go onto the stock market. That was my plan when I left school, because my father told me at 14, you have to make a plan. You can't, if you don't make a plan, the system will make a plan for you. So because my plan was at the time was to work in banking, I was geared towards banking. I was working in NatWest Bank, and then I went to Royal Bank of Scotland, and then Royal Bank of Scotland took over NatWest, and then I went back to NatWest, and then so my mindset was in banking. So then after family relations got involved with gangs and drugs and some other stuff, that kind of swayed me towards youth work. Because at the time as well, I was also doing, so I was working in a bank 9 to 5 in a suit and tie, but on the evening and weekends, I was doing Mecca to Medina. So as a single man, someone always told me, keep yourself busy. So that's what I saw after work, I'll be doing Mecca to Medina in the evening and weekends. So when I started to get involved in youth work first voluntarily, I then realized I don't want to do banking no more. I want to do youth work. Because when I was young, I never see it as a viable occupation or viable career. So when I got involved in youth work, I had to change myself. I had to change my mind state. I had to change my mindset. I had to change my mode of thinking. And it was a different skill set I had to actually learn. So I had to learn from, thankfully, I had some close friends who were youth workers, Brother Dawood, Brother Rashid Nix, and a few other brothers. So I had to sit down, learn from them, just sit down and just watch them in action. And then from there, that was the foundation. And a sister called Nora and Khan, because I used to go into prisons and I used to just watch how she used to work in the prisons. And that helped me to adapt and into a new career. So even that applies to adapting into new careers, adapting to trying to be a better person of faith. That applies to your marriage life and your family life too. Yeah. So I believe that verse, it relates to different aspects, all aspects of life.
I think that personal moral accountability, that you can change yourself, and that's a basic realization, is very fundamental. And it's also very connected to the idea of identity. Like I can be a different person. I can be someone else. I'm not forced to be what I don't know what society thinks of me or expects of me. I can do what I want to do, and even and there's various parts about that I think very important. I'll touch on one, but it's this idea that anything there is about yourself that you don't like, if you can change it, then we'll change it. Don't worry about not liking it. All right. And if you don't, and if there is something which you can't change, then you shouldn't not like it, because Allah will never judge you on it. And Allah's judgment is the only judgment that matters. Allah will not judge you because you're this color, that color, this sex, that sex, this height, that height, this shoe size, whatever. These are things you can't change about yourself. Allah will not judge you because of it. So, you should only concern yourselves with things that Allah will judge, and anything that Allah judges about you, fundamentally, you are able to change about yourself. So never feel despairing, but also never feel arrogant, because whatever you think you're good at, I'm such a good person, I do this, that could change. So don't be proud about it. So this is a very hard thing to pick on, because once you kind of get that in your head as a Muslim, that the only thing in my identity that's valuable in terms of Allah is things that are changeable, then it's like almost I don't have an identity in a sense. It's like my identity is in my actions and what I do and how my character, and to quote Martin Luther King, it's like you judge people by the content of their character, not the color of their skin, and so on. This is exactly what the implication of this is, that the best among you are those with taqwa, which brings us on to I think your second choice of verse.
Yes, it was my second choice of verse, but no, I'll do it because for some reason there's another verse that's just being repeated.
Okay, well, we get the third verse in a moment.
I'm going to make that my third verse, so I'm going to say this one. Yes, the choice of my second verse is Allah has made us into nations and tribes so we may know each other. Okay, and I believe that's so profound, because how it relates to me, because I don't like to give or quote tafsir. I leave that for the professionals. I just try to, what I try and do, I talk about how it relates to me and how it relates to my environment and people I know and people that I love. How it relates to me is, of course, alhamdulillah, one of the beauties of Islam and the beauties of mankind and beauties of England, the UK, that is very multicultural. So growing up, I went to my primary school was predominantly Asian, okay, and my secondary school was predominantly African and Afro-Caribbean. And then when I went into banking, it was predominantly white British, okay? So I had to adapt even though my primary school was predominantly Asian, I mainly stayed with the Afro-Caribbean young people, because that's how it was. That's how it used to be. And then when I went into secondary school, my secondary school was predominantly African, Afro-Caribbean. So that's where I learned a lot of culture, even though I learned culture at home and heritage at home, but there was like a neo culture that was growing, AKA hip hop, AKA ragga, and AKA different fashion styles and so forth, hoodies and all the type of fashion. And then when I went into to banking, it was a predominantly white British establishment. So maybe the first 2 days I was a bit, whoa, I'm not sure about this, I'm not used to this. But then when you get to know anyone, and I learned, when you just get to know everyone, I know in Islam we're taught this, but sometimes when you only learn this through personal reaction, personal experiences, this is my feeling. And then you realize everyone is the same, no matter where you come from, no matter what your heritage is. We all have the similar issues, similar concerns, similar ideals. Of course, there's variations, but yeah, so basically that's my life. And then when I embraced Islam, so yeah, so I should explain. So, okay, 9 to 5, I was working in the bank, a predominantly white British establishment, okay? And then in the evening and weekends, I was doing rapping and doing poetry, which is predominantly African, Afro-Caribbean. This was before I embraced Islam. And so I used to go to rap shows and things like this with my old friends. And then when I embraced Islam, the multiculturalism of Arabs, Asians, white British, white European, African, Afro-Caribbean, as well as Somali. And what's beautiful about Islam is that, like when I came to Islam, I used to be slim, believe it or not. But then, oh brother, come to my house for dinner. Oh brother, come to my house for dinner. Oh, brother. And look at me now. I'm big and chubby. I'm not blaming the Muslims, of course. It's my fault. I'm too greedy. But yeah, so yeah, that's why that verse is very profound, because we've been made into nations and tribes to know each other. And I think it's important that we know each other's heritage. And the reality is we're going to get it wrong. That's why I don't really agree with the cancel culture, because we have to understand, like I'm guilty many times, because I do, and one of the things I do is I do race relations. I never put it in my bio, I don't like to promote it. I do like race relations and unconscious bias awareness. So when I'm out with my children, my kids say to me, and I'll be honest in saying it, oh, daddy, you can't say that. That's sexist. Oh, daddy, you can't say that. That's racist. Oh, daddy, you can't say that. That's xenophobic. Oh, my kids know all of them. And I'm thinking, whoa.
With that, I think what this verse in particular points out is that it's lita'aruf, which means to recognize one another. That kind of know is, I know this person, or I know that tribe, or I know that, you know, it's that we are different, and there's no problem being different, you know. And this is why the verse goes on to say, and the best among you are those with most taqwa, those with most.
I mean, yes.
So the point is that we have differences which we can't change, and
yes,
that's fine. We can say, you know, this race of people is different to us, and of course they are different. They're not.
There are differences.
There are differences, and how big those differences are, what they matter. You know, a lot of it doesn't matter. What matters is how. You know, we're not better because we are different. They only are better because we have more taqwa, and that's the important. So you don't say, you know, you don't have this idea that if you say anything at all about how we are different is somehow a bad thing. It's only when we judge each other as being bad because we're different that's where it becomes a problem. And you know, it may be that, I don't know, on average white people are more likely to be short-sighted. I don't know. Who cares? Does it matter? Not really. I mean, it doesn't make us worse people or better people. It doesn't matter. You want to mention your third verse, and we try and wrap it up after that. So
yeah, the last and final verse that's been saying to me, mention this verse for some reason, is after hardship comes ease, which I think is a very important verse for myself and for, I would say, people in general. Because we've all been through hardships. We've all been through trials and tribulations in all aspects of life. Some of us are still going through them now in different aspects of life. And I believe that's a very important verse, because sometimes when we're going through our trials, our tribulations, sometimes we think we're alone, especially men. I can say this, and especially among men I know. I can't say all men, I'm talking about men I know, because I have a friend going through a particular issue, which I found out by accident, is that we don't speak about our trials and tribulations. When we see each other, Assalamu alaikum, wa alaikum salam, how are you? Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, everything. But then you get a random call one day from someone and you find out it's not alhamdulillah. It's something, you understand?
So too late as well to do anything. It's like they've messed up so badly.
Yeah. This has happened on a few occasions, and this is among men I know.
Yeah.
That are, I consider good friends. So sometimes when I know they're going through hardships, it hurts me. But then when I'm going through certain hardships, this is the thing now, I'm being honest and transparent here. I don't like telling people. I like to rough it out. As they say, the British say, the stiff upper lip. My dad's a strong Jamaican man. And when he was going through troubles, because I'm thinking to myself, I've got 2 kids, alhamdulillah, a wife, alhamdulillah, of course, ups and downs. And I was thinking, my father, he had 6 of us. And I was thinking, whoa, 6. I'm trying to work it out in my brain. Alhamdulillah, okay. So, and he never really expressed any issues. We always had food on the table, bills always paid, home, nice, comfortable. But I'm thinking back now, he must have gone through so much troubles, and he never complained. He never complained. He took it on the chin. And then what it is as well. And so that's the thing. And then what I've learned as well, through the hardships, and sometimes through the hardships, we learn so much that benefit us to help us when we're in ease. So
yes, this ties in actually very well with the first verse about changing yourself, because as we talked about, that difficulty that you have to go through in order to get to the ease is like this thing, like these people are talking about, this self-medication idea, is that you have to sometimes you have to, get your nose down and grind on with the difficult thing to get the work done, and then the ease comes. And this is inna ma'al usri yusra is the verse you're thinking of there. That there are other verses perhaps you mean, but that phrase carries on. So continue the work, because this is patience and perseverance, which is what is also needed for success. And all these things tie together as an ethos which helps people overcome those difficulties, because there is a promise of ease, there is a promise of reward, and there is a promise that, if you change what's inside yourself, that's how to fix your condition. And so, yes, mashallah, very good. I think we have to pull it to a close now. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I know I could chat a bit. So jazakallah big time for having me on your show. I really appreciate it. Okay. And I would say this is a very unique type of interview I've ever done. I think this is one of the most unique ones. So yeah, jazakallah, thank you very much for helping me to be part of it.